There are all sorts of crazy things that happen whenever you're getting divorced. And typically, some of the biggest dramatic conversations are around money and finances. And what we know in the Midwest is that most people's family finances are wrapped up in a home. And so today I'm here with Jamie Brown.
Hi.
She is one of the best title people in the entire Kansas City metro. And I'm so excited to chat with her today about what in the world you need to know if you are selling a home in a divorce. Besides having a good real estate agent and making sure that everyone's on the same page with the plan for the proceeds of the home, there are definitely some legal issues that you need to just be aware of whenever you're selling a property.
Yes.
Before we get started, do you mind to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Jamie Brown. I own Prestige Land Title. I opened it. I have been in the industry for around 25 years and have seen and worked in my fair share of divorce cases.
Oh, Jamie and I have because you've kind of seen it all. And we were sitting here chatting about a few of the stories that we were hoping to share today, just because sometimes it makes you feel better to know you're not the only one out there with crazy stuff going on.
Is divorce is kind of an ever evolving situation, even though they can indeed drag on for quite some time. It is an ever evolving situation.
I want to set the stage on a few things that I think sometimes lay people don't understand. First of all, if you are married, you are either married or you're single.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I've heard it said is you're either pregnant or you're not pregnant.
Yes.
There is no in between.
No.
It doesn't matter how long you've been moved out of the house, how many new girlfriends you have, you're one or the other. It's a legal status more than anything. And so when we work with a title company, that's one of the biggest questions that they have whenever it comes to the home is, are you a married person or a single person, right?
Yes, we have seen situations where potentially people have been separated for 10 years or more. But for our perspective, you are, like she says, either pregnant or not pregnant. So you're either married or you're not married. Separated is not a legal status. If you, in the eyes of the law, it's one or the other. You're either married or you're not married.
There's lots of ways that you can buy a house. You could buy a house as a single person, and then once you get married, that person now has an interest in your property.
Yes, and that is something we make sure, or we want to make sure everybody understands, is that that's an automatic happening. That it doesn't, there's nothing, you file nothing. The minute you have your marriage certificate, indeed, you become a married person or a married couple. And now that person in the state of Missouri and Kansas has an immediate marital interest in your home. And we get a lot of like pushback, like, oh, but we signed a prenuptial. And that might be the
Mhm.
case. And that prenuptial might affect the terms of the money disbursement, but for our legality of transferring ownership, you're a married couple and they will have to indeed be around to sign some paperwork.
Right. And so, in the beginnings of a divorce, sometimes people get really emotional about who's going to stay in the house, thinking if I stay in the house is automatically mine. That's just not the way it works.
No. In fact, we have seen it go quite the opposite way. We have seen where one spouse has stayed and has maintained the house and even has made the mortgage payments. And then in the divorce decree, they were not awarded the marital residence. The other spouse was. And so they literally are swapping and one's moving back in while the other one is moving out. It's an awkward situation, to say the least.
It absolutely can be. For the purpose of the video, I think a lot of people go, all right, we've got to sell the house and we need to sell the house fast in a lot of situations.
Right.
Finances are tight, or maybe finances aren't tight, but all of your cash funds are wrapped up in the
Right.
property. You've got to get rid of that property so both people can take their cash and move on. So that's one of the biggest questions that I hear is we're in the middle of a divorce. We've got to get the cash out of our home and we're going to sell it. Do I take that cash at closing? How do I actually get that money?
Right. So if you have a joint account, we're more than happy to obviously send the funds to a joint account and for you guys to work that out amongst yourselves. If that is not, like, obviously that's a best case scenario. If that is not an option in your particular situation, as it often is not, we are more than happy to, if there's a disagreement between how much money goes where, or you're just pending maybe mediation, or you're pending that final decree to be signed off by the judge, we're more than happy to go ahead and transfer those funds into like a mutually neutral account with either of your attorneys. They will hold that in their escrow account. And indeed, when the court order becomes final, or you guys just finally agree in mediation and have a final mediation agreement, then your attorney will disperse those funds in accordance with that statement. I know some people get real caught up on which attorney holds it,
Yes.
but it is indeed a neutral account. That is what escrow is about. We are a third neutral party. We have no bias towards either side
Right.
in the transactions. And your attorney's escrow account is the same.
Right. And one idea that we see play it out, we just had this in a closing
Yeah.
last month, was the couple had a sum of money and they hadn't agreed where everything was going to go, but the wife needed about $10,000 to be able to move into a rental and get everything started with her new life. And they both agreed, hey, wife, you take 10,000, I'll take 10,000, and the attorneys are going to hold the rest while we fight it out.
Yes. And as long
Great idea.
as, yes, a great idea. And as long as all parties are willing to put that in writing that they agree to us dispersing those funds, the funds obviously aren't mine.
Right.
So I don't really have any hard and fast rules that says you can't go ahead and say 10 and 10 and then let us send the rest to an escrow account for whenever the judge signs off or whenever you guys work out your differences in mediation.
Right. And sometimes this is a question I get, just because you filed for a divorce doesn't mean that your transaction gets complicated in any way. If the two of you have an agreement in place, I had a client a couple of months ago, they called, they're like, hey, we're getting divorced, but we're all good. And they were the whole way. They sold the house, they put the money in a joint bank account, paid off their debt. Everything was fine.
Those are they're wonderful. We take like all of those.
Yes, because at the end of the day, you hear the statistics like half of all marriages end in divorce. This is
Yes.
not something that we are new to.
No, it is extremely common. And it is extremely common for us too. Like they just come into it knowing, hey, maybe we aren't even in the filing stage yet. Maybe we are
Mhm.
in the separation phase and we're gonna sell the house and then we're gonna take that money to go both hire our attorneys to go
Right.
ahead and get this divorce accomplished. And so in that regard, if the two parties come in and they're more than willing to say, I want to give you 50%, you give me 50%, and we'll both go on our merry way, totally fine with us.
Great.
There is no we don't really have a stake in it as a neutral party, so as long as all parties can agree, then that's great for us. We will do as you've instructed, it is your money.
Exactly. Now, there are some complicated things that can happen with houses and titles and who got the mortgage. And if you're married, it can get really messy. So, I know that you've shared a story with me at one point where it doesn't always happen that a home is in the same county as where the divorce is being filed.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because
Yeah.
I do think that happens.
It does. So in the title world, when we go and research the properties, we run judgments on a particular person's name, on a seller's name, like Rebecca Green. And when we do that, we're looking for any circuit court cases that would attach to the real estate that's currently owned. So if you say sell a house in Clay County and your divorce is filed over in Platte County, we're not going to have the information from the Platte County Circuit Court attaching to that home in Clay County. So I would think, it would be good to transcribe that information into the county where your real estate is located,
Right.
just so that everybody is forthcoming with the information and that anything that happens in that court case over here affects the home that is located in the county over here. We have certainly seen that not work in people's favor because the transcription just didn't happen between the two counties.
Right. And what that can mean for you, and Jamie and I have both seen it in some really ugly situations, is maybe I own a house in Jackson County and I sell my house in Jackson County and I have $100,000 cash from that. But I'm getting divorced over here in Clay County.
Right.
And I didn't tell the title company that I have a divorce going on.
Right.
And it's kind of just antiquated computer systems
It
when
is.
you bounce
Yes.
down to it.
Yeah.
But that antiquated computer system caused a $100,000 complication.
Correct. Because then as a title company, we have there's no teeth in it for us to enforce that judgment unless it has been transcribed from one county to the other. So we, as a neutral third party, we aren't the police of these things. So we can't say, hey, you have to pay that. We don't have a lot of legal ground to stand on in this regard because it's not a lien against the home.
Now, typically, your attorney will go back and fight for that. It's not like that money's
Yes.
just gone. It was part of the marital portfolio, but
Yes.
that money might be gone for a year while it gets tied up in court,
Correct.
which is devastating to people. So, that's one of the best things that you can do when you're getting divorced. If you have a large real estate portfolio or just a complicated situation, is to make sure you ask your attorney if they are going to be filing all of this in all the counties where your homes are located.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the
Yes.
best?
That is by far. So they'll file in one initial county and then they do what they call a transcription or transcribe it, and they'll transcribe into another county. And that allows for us and our title researchers to see, oh my gosh, Rebecca Green's getting divorced over here in Clay County, but she has this property in Platte County. And indeed, they have transcribed it. So, if you agreed to pay half of those proceeds to your ex spouse, we know that that is indeed, we have to follow the court order. It is part of the county record at that point, and it does attach to the real estate.
Right. It's back to all this legal jargon and mumbo jumbo that a marriage is a legal agreement and there are legal processes that you have to follow. So I have another question for you.
Yeah.
This is a friend that is divorcing. She's staying in the home. So you talked about like running judgments on people.
Mhm.
Her ex husband has a lot of debt specifically in his name. If they were going to go sell the house, would that would she have to pay off his debt if they own the home together?
So we are only looking for debt that is tied to your real estate. When we go and run judgments or do the like our research teams when they run judgments at the circuit
Okay.
court and they run judgment or they run just the title records over at the recorder of deeds. So if it isn't like a judgment such as maybe a credit card that did not get paid and they went to court and they got a default judgment, usually attorneys are pretty quick to go ahead and transcribe anything over to circuit court because they know it will attach to the
It's
real
coming.
estate.
Right.
So if that happens, then we would find the judgment. Now, if this is just debt that he has that he's like making payments on, none of that actually comes into the real estate transaction unless there is a finalized court order, like
Okay.
in your divorce, that says this portion is coming out of, his half of the proceeds and this is going to come from your half of the proceeds.
Mhm.
It's a little bit of an accounting nightmare for us, but we are required to follow the court order as it's listed out there.
And I've heard it said a few times, but this is just one of those things where unfortunately sometimes you have to trust people. As a title company, you can't take, let's say I owe $20,000 to Capital One credit card.
Right.
You can't pay that off. You can't
No,
force me to pay it off.
no.
You just have
Has
to give me
nothing,
the money.
yeah, for us, it has nothing to do with the real estate that you're transferring. It's just a debt that's out there. It isn't until like a court order in the circuit court addresses it that
Mm,
it becomes attached to the real estate because whatever the court order says is the guide that we are mandated to follow. So if the court says, "Hey, you're going to sell the house and you're going to pay off this money," we're going to follow that to a T. So
yes.
that will be, we will say, "Hey, give us that statement for Cap One. We're going to go ahead and make sure that this payment gets paid." If those are not part of the divorce decree and they just say, "Hey, that is his debt, so we're setting that aside for him and he'll take the proper measures to get her name removed off of it," that has nothing to do. Nobody's tracking that makes that actually happens. The same thing we see a lot of. Also, we see a lot of refinances. So
Okay.
we've decided to divorce. The wife wants to stay in the home, and the ex does not want to stay in the home. So he says, "Hey, you can have the house, but I want my name taken off of the mortgage so that I can go get another mortgage and buy my own house." And then a refinance does happen. And typically in those refinance transactions, we will be paying him his what we call an equity payment.
Okay.
That is usually outlined in the divorce decree or in,
Mhm.
like, say, an agreed upon settlement between the two parties. And then we will go ahead and pay him and have him quit claim off of your property at that point in time. I do love it when a quitclaim deed has some good language in it that
I'm such a title nerd. I love it when there's
I
good
do
language.
love it. If they can just tie the court case, since Missouri does not have that flow of information between the circuit court and the recorder of deeds, just putting any information on there that this deed was given to satisfy the court case
There you go.
is a double check there. And my favorite story from those deeds is that typically a quitclaim deed will say for valuable consideration of $10 or maybe a dollar, but we one time got one in to record for a divorce that said for love and consideration. And I love that attorney immediately. Like, wow, you are my guy. Like, that's
We did this
hilarious.
all for love.
We did all of this for love and
The next song.
consideration. And now you can have this property. It's all
Oh
yours.
my gosh. So one other thing I thought that you've shared some
Mhm.
stories on this with me one time. Let's talk about HELOCs and houses
Sure.
because sometimes those disappear. So the story that I'm thinking of was a couple owned a home. They pulled out a HELOC around $30,000 to do some type of repair that they wanted, and then they paid that off. But what we found at closing was that that HELOC had been redrawn on.
Yes,
and then the couple owed, right? Talk
correct.
a little bit about how that can happen and what
Yeah.
somebody might need to be aware of.
So, home equity line of credit is indeed a mortgage against your property. There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding surrounding that in just the lay public, but the collateral for that loan is, of course, the home. So, therefore, it is a mortgage that is tied to the real estate records using the home as your collateral. It is an open ended line of credit, though. So, just like a credit card where you charge up, pay it off, that doesn't close out the account like a regular mortgage. You
Right.
just have X amount of dollars. When you pay it off, it releases the collateral, which is your home, and everybody's good. That revolving credit line goes on and on and on. And so, even if you have completely paid off your home equity line of credit, if you haven't authorized or notified your bank that you want to close that line of credit out, it will just continue to sit out there on your property until somebody like us comes in and says, "Hey, you have two mortgages, not one." And they say, "No, we only have one." And I say, "No, you still have two." A lot of times we're running into solar panels or
Oh, yeah.
loans that are for some sort of fixture that is staying with the property. So
Mhm.
obviously, if you go to sell your house, you're not taking your solar panels with you in the
Right.
U-Haul. So the loan that you might have on those sometimes is attached to the real property through what we call a UCC financing statement, and it is a commercial financing statement. Those have to either be paid or you have to get rid of the solar panels. We have to do something that addresses those panels, and you need to be talking with your real estate agent like right up front as to whether you're planning on leaving those with the home. You need to be having those conversations. We've seen that with solar panels, water softener systems, anything that is like inside the house that you're not going to be able to take with you. We're talking about big things that aren't going to fit in the U-Haul that you are indeed going to be leaving with the home. If you owe any money on those, you have to be talking to your real estate agent about it because we need to get those cleared so that your
I
buyer either gets to keep it or not. And the home
right.
equity lines of credit, they just sit out there. They're just dormant of the public record until you decide that you want to close out that account and you notify the bank as such.
And what can be scary is if we're married and I decide I want to kind of be a butthead and I want to start writing checks to myself from our home equity line of credit,
You can.
and it happens a lot. And so if you have a home equity line of credit on a house and you're getting divorced, I would highly advise that you call your lender and make sure that you know the balance on that and
Yes.
that nobody has access to it anymore. It would be like having a credit card that we share while we're
Right.
divorcing. Not a good safe idea for anybody, really.
No. Those home equity lines of credit are kind of, I think, sticky just because people do forget that they
Yes.
are just sitting out there. You might have used it maybe for like putting a pool in your backyard and then you've paid it off. And then 5 years later, you still do have this $100,000 or $200,000 line of credit. And it can get real sticky if somebody starts using that and the other person maybe doesn't even know it's an option or that it even still exists out there.
Right. Thank you so much for all of
You
this
are so
today.
welcome. I'm
It's been great.
excited to be here and talk it up over some divorces. So,
Yay, we love
yay.
divorce. Well, if you have questions for Jamie, want to leave a comment on the video or reach out to her, we'll put her contact information in the show notes. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.